Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Floyd Show. As always, I am your host, Fearless Floyd. Today, we are back with Noel Benoist, and we're going to discuss the CIA's MK Ultra project or program, whatever you want to call it, but most fondly and affectionately coined MK Ultra. One that has been under the auspices of the MK Ultra program. You've been MK Ultra'd. There you go. I'll be right back and we'll break down what MK Ultra is all about. And I am back. And let's dive right into Wikipedia. And again, I'm not endorsing Wikipedia by any means. We take all the information from Wikipedia with a grain of salt, folks. So it is not the end all be all. You could read it right now and come back tomorrow and it'll be a little bit different because somebody's always tweaking Wikipedia. So I just use it for reference. That's all. Kind of gives you a general overall story that's more likely than not based on truth. But again, we have history and herstory, so it is what it is. Ooh, that was almost catastrophic. That's why it has a lid. All right. If you're watching this video during the holidays of 2024 and 2025, I have the 12 days of Christmas. This video is coming out on Tuesday, December 31st. So you have until January 6th to catch one of the specials that I'm running every day. Got it amped up. Oh, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for this. I thought, there we go. Wikipedia, MK Ultra. Project MK Ultra was a human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. The term MK Ultra is a CIA cryptonym. I've never heard of a cryptonym. MK is an arbitrary prefix standing for the Office of Technical Service, and ultra is an arbitrary word of the dictionary to denominate this project. The program has been widely condemned as a violation of individual rights and an example of the CIA's abuse of power, with critics highlighting its disregard for consent and its corrosive impact on democratic principles. Project MK Ultra began in 1953 and was halted in 1973. Apparently, it ran for 20 years, if it's dead. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD, and other chemicals without the subject's consent. Additionally, other methods beyond chemical compounds were used, including electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Project MK Ultra was preceded by Project Artichoke. It was organized through the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence and coordinated with the United States Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. That's plural. The program engaged in illegal activities, including the use of U.S. and Canadian citizens as unwitting test subjects. MK Ultra's scope was broad, with activities carried out under the guise of research at more than 80 institutions aside from the military, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. Really? The CIA operated using front organizations, although some top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. Project MK Ultra was revealed to the public in 1975 by the Church Committee, and we will do a video, a show with Noel on the Church Committee. Named after Senator Frank Church of the United States Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on CIA activities within the United States, which was the Rockefeller Commission. Investigative efforts were hampered by the CIA Director Richard Helms's order that all MK Ultra files be destroyed in 1973. The Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the small number of documents that survived Helms's order. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a cache of 20,000 documents relating to MK Ultra, which led to Senate hearings. Some surviving information about MK Ultra was declassified in 2001. Background: origin of the project. And I'm sure you won't find this surprising. During the early 1940s, Nazi scientists working in the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Dachau during World War II conducted interrogation experiments on human subjects. Substances such as barbiturates, morphine derivatives, and hallucinogens such as mescaline were employed in experiments conducted on the Polish, Russian, Jewish, and other nationalities prisoners of war. The aim of these experiments was to develop a truth serum, which would, in the words of one laboratory assistant to Dr. scientist Kurt Plautner, if I said that correctly, and I quote, eliminate the will of the person examined, close quote. American historian Stephen Kinzer argues that the CIA project was a continuation of these earlier Nazi experiments, citing the numerous German scientists who were hired to work for the U.S. as part of Operation Paperclip, which I've mentioned before. American interest in drug-related interrogation experiments began in 1943 when the Office of Strategic Services, which is the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA, folks. Okay? You don't see that in here, but like I said, if I wanted to, I could add to Wikipedia all the time. However, I don't have the time to dedicate to do that. When the OSS began developing a truth drug that would produce uninhibited truthfulness in an interrogated person. In 1947, the United States Navy initiated Project Chatter, an interrogation program which saw the first testing of LSD on human subjects. In 1950, the CIA, under the direction of General Walter Bedell Smith, initiated a series of interrogation projects involving human subjects, beginning with the launch of Project Bluebird, officially renamed Project Artichoke, on August 20th, 1951. Project Artichoke was a project developed and enacted by the United States Central Intelligence Agency for the purpose of researching methods of interrogation. Project Artichoke was succeeded by Project MK Ultra, which began in 1953. Directed and overseen by Brigadier General Paul F. Gaynor, the objective of Artichoke was to determine whether an individual could be made to involuntarily perform an act of attempted assassination. Morphine, mescaline, and LSD were all administered on unknowing CIA agents in an attempt to produce amnesia in the subjects. In addition, Project Artichoke aimed to employ certain viruses such as dengue fever as potential incapacitating agents. Aims and leadership. The project was headed by Sidney Gottlieb, but began on the order of CIA Director Allen Dulles on April 13, 1953. Its aim was to develop mind-controlling drugs for its use against the Soviet bloc in response to alleged Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean use of mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war during the Korean War. The CIA wanted to use similar methods on their own captives and was interested in manipulating foreign leaders with such techniques, devising several schemes to drug Fidel Castro. It often conducted experiments without the subject's knowledge and or consent. In some cases, academic researchers were funded through grants from CIA front organizations, but were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes. Now, as you listen to this, folks, I want you to visualize in your mind from the current headlines over the last 4 years of how a CIA front organization might be impacting certain celebrities, pop stars, actors, politicians, etc., etc. The project attempted to produce a perfect truth serum for interrogating suspected Soviet spies during the Cold War and to explore other possibilities of mind control. Sub-Project 54 was the Navy's top-secret perfect concussion program, which was supposed to use subaural frequency blasts to erase memory. The program was never carried out. Most MK-Ultra records were destroyed in 1973 by order of CIA Director Richard Helms, so it has been difficult for investigators to gain a complete understanding of the more than 150 funded research subprojects sponsored by MK-Ultra and related CIA programs. The project began during a period of what English journalist Rupert Cornwell described as paranoia at the CIA, when the U.S. had lost its nuclear monopoly and fear of communism was at its height. CIA counterintelligence chief James Jesus Angleton believed that a mole had penetrated the organization at the highest levels. The agency poured millions of dollars into studies examining ways to influence and control the mind and enhance its ability to extract information from resistant subjects during interrogation. Some historians assert that one goal of MK-Ultra and related CIA projects was to create a Manchurian Candidate-style subject. American historian Alfred W. McCoy has claimed that the CIA attempted to focus media attention on these sorts of ridiculous programs so that the public would not look at the research's primary goal, which was effective methods of interrogation. Applications. The 1976 Church Committee report found that the MK Delta program drugs were used primarily as an aid to interrogations, but MK Ultra / MK Delta materials were also used for harassment, discrediting, or disabling purposes. Other related projects. In 1964, MK Search was the name given to the continuation of the MK Ultra program. The MK Search program was divided into two projects dubbed MK Often and MK Chickwit. Funding for MK Search commenced in 1965 and ended in 1971. The project was a joint project between the U.S. Army Chemical Corps and the CIA's Office of Research and Development to find new offensive use agents with a focus on incapacitating agents. Its purpose was to develop, test, and evaluate capabilities in the covert use of biological, chemical, and radioactive material systems and techniques of producing predictable human behavior and or physiological changes in support of highly sensitive operational requirements. By March 1971, over 26,000 potential agents had been acquired for future screening. The CIA was interested in bird migration patterns for chemical and biological warfare, CBW research. Chemical Biological Warfare, CBW research. Subproject 139, designated Bird Disease Studies at Penn State University. MK often was to deal with testing and toxicological transmissivity and behavioral effects of drugs in animals and, ultimately, humans. MK Chickwit was concerned with acquiring information on new drug developments in Europe and Asia and with acquiring samples. In January 1957, the CIA started a subproject of MKUltra in an effort to broaden their scientific research. Subproject 68, conducted at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal under the direction of psychiatrist Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, represents one of the most infamous and ethically controversial endeavors within the MKUltra program. This subproject aimed to explore innovative techniques for manipulating and controlling human behavior, particularly through the methods of psychic driving and depatterning. Well, that's a tough one. Psychic driving involved subjecting patients to continuous playback of recorded messages, often with the themes of self-improvement or identity reinforcement, while they were under the influence of powerful psychoactive substances such as LSD or barbiturates. Experiments on Americans. CIA documents suggest that they investigated chemical, biological, and radiological methods of mind control as part of MKUltra. They spent an estimated $10 million or more, roughly $87.5 million adjusted for inflation. During a hearing by the Senate's Health Subcommittee, a testimony by the Deputy Director of the CIA stated that over 30 institutions and universities were involved in the experimentation program of testing drugs on unknowing citizens at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans, and foreign. Several of these tests involved issuing of LSD to unaware subjects in social situations. The Army was subject to testing of LSD, which occurred in 3 phases. The first phase included over 1,000 American soldiers who willingly volunteered for the testing of chemical warfare experiments. Phase 2 had 96 volunteers who were induced with LSD in evaluation of the possibility of intelligence uses of the drug. The third phase included projects Third Chance and Derby Hat, which conducted experiments on 16 unwitting non-volunteer subjects that, after receiving LSD, were interrogated as part of Operation Field Tests. After retiring in 1972, Gottlieb dismissed his entire effort for the CIA's MKUltra program as useless. Files discovered in 1977 containing 700 pages of new information showed that experiments had continued until Gottlieb ordered the program halted on July 10, 1972. LSD, lysergic dithylamide acid. In 1938, LSD was created by Albert Hofmann at the Sandoz Laboratories in Basel, Switzerland. The early directors of MKUltra became aware of the existence of LSD and sought its use for mind control. In the early 1950s, MKUltra director Sidney Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to buy the entire supply of LSD for $240,000. And that was when? In the 50s, in the early 50s. That was a chunk of money, which in 1924 would be $4,227,079.00. This LSD supply gave Gottlieb the ability to fulfill his experiment by spreading LSD to prisons, hospitals, institutions, clinics, and foundations in order to see how the citizens would react to the drug without knowing exactly what was happening to them. Early CIA efforts focused on LSD 25, which I've had in my hand before, which later came to dominate many of MK Ultra's programs. The CIA wanted to know if they could make Soviet spies defect against their will and whether the Soviets could do the same to the CIA's own operatives. Documents obtained from the CIA by John D. Marks under the Freedom of Information Act in 1976 showed that in 1953, the CIA considered purchasing 10 kilograms, that's 22 pounds, folks, of LSD, enough for 100 million doses. The proposed purchase aimed to stop other countries from controlling the supply. The document showed that the CIA purchased some of the quantities of LSD from Sandoz laboratories in Switzerland. So basically, they started, doing these experiments to mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, prostitutes, people who could not fight back, as one agency officer put it. They administered LSD to one mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days. We'll get back to that. This is your government, folks. This is what they think of you. You're nothing but a lab experiment, no better than one of those lab rats. They could care less if you die or not, because guess what? They got somebody else that's going to replace you. All they got to do is wave a gift card, tickets to a professional sports event, and you're going to go stand in line. Well, maybe not my audience. But here, the men were dosed with LSD, the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. Operation Midnight Climax. Can you imagine the horror of our own government, our own intelligence? The project studied the effects of psychoactive drugs, particularly LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, cocaine, AMT, and DMT on people. What is AMT? Amethyltryptamine is a psychedelic stimulant and enotactogen drug of the tryptamine family, originally developed. Sounds like some DMT stuff. Sounds like a little bit off. Yeah. So it's probably something similar to DMT, dimethyltryptamine, methyltryptamine. Yeah, there you go. There's the difference. All right. So basically, it goes on and on and on. I just, I don't want to read all of these because it's very lengthy. Other drugs. Another technique investigated was the intravenous administration of a barbiturate in one arm and amphetamine in the other. Ooh. I've done something similar to that myself. I told you guys, I used to be a superstar drug addict, and cocaine in one arm, P2P, crystal methamphetamine in the other arm. And then I went to my high school prom. Absolutely. The barbiturates were released into the person first, and then as soon as the person began to fall asleep, the amphetamines were released. Other experiments involved heroin, morphine, temazepam, used under the code name MK Search, mescaline, psilocybin, scopolamine is how that's saying right here. I'm going to get into that in a minute. Alcohol and sodium pentothal. Also, hypnosis, experiments on Canadians, motivation and assessments, secret detention camps. We know those as black sites. Revelation. We went through this. Basically, this is just a repeat of what I've already covered. Let's talk about the Church Committee. 1994, the U.S. General Accounting Office report. Death of Frank Olson. I'm getting down here for a reason. In 1953, a few days before his death, Frank Olson quit his position as acting chief of Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, Maryland. What goes on at Fort Detrick? Oh, do your research. Because of the severe moral crisis concerning the nature of his biological weapons research, among Olson's concerns were the development of assassination materials used by the CIA, the CIA's use of biological warfare materials in covert operations, experimentation with biological weapons in populated areas, collaboration with former Nazi scientists under Operation Paperclip, LSD mind control research, and the use of psychoactive drugs during terminal interrogations under a program codenamed Project Artichoke. And of course, when he resigned, what happened to him? He just happened to die a few days later. That sounds like a show all in of itself about Frank Olson. Legal issues involving informed consent. Notable people regarding the MK Ultra program. Documented experimenters, confirmed experimenters. Harold Alexander Abramson, Donald Ewan Cameron, Sidney Gottlieb, Harris Isbell, Martin Theodore Ornay, Louis Jolyon West, George Hunter White. Alleged experimenters, Jim Jones, I'm sure you all remember him, the Jim Jones Massacre, Charlie Siragusa. Documented subjects, confirmed subjects, Allen Ginsberg, Ken Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Harold Barr, Robert Hunter, not to be confused with Hunter Robert Biden. Alleged subjects, James Whitey Bulger. If you don't know who he is, you should go look up old Whitey Bulger. Mafia boss up in the Northeast, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Sirhan, Robert F. Kennedy Sr.'s assassin. Charles Manson, without any further ado with that name. In pop culture, MK Ultra plays a part in many conspiracy theories. Here's some of the television that has been profiled on, the films, the music, the literature, games. See also for further reading. And of course, the references. And I have Noel backstage. And that was a awesome introduction to what MK Ultra is. Now we're going to hear somebody who may or may not have participated in any aspect of the MK Ultra program, but we're definitely going to hear what he knows about it. And without further ado, let me welcome to the stage former NSA whistleblower, former Man in Black, former 13th seat for Majestic 12, Noel Benoist, co-author with the late FBI whistleblower Ted Gunderson, FBI 200-year plan. How you doing, sir?
I'm breathing, so I'm doing good.
All right.
They haven't got me yet.
All right. Yeah, getting ready for the new year, just around the corner.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for those of you who didn't catch any other videos and you're just now finding out about Noel Benoist, who he is, he's done a series of videos. Every video that we're doing will be a different chapter in the book called The Pedagogy of Noel. Basically, what that means is the life of, and we're trying to document it as much as possible, as clearly as possible. So, Noel's going to share his story with you. Just briefly, Noel, tell them when you were involved with Navy or military intelligence, when you were with the Majestic program, and if you had, go into MK Ultra. Floor's yours, sir.
There you go. Well, yeah, or basically about close to mid 66, I transferred from regular Army into Army Security Agency. And I think it was about actually around March or April of 66. I think something like that. They took me into Army Security Agency, and then I graduated the schools there, and I was commissioned and put in military intelligence. And basically, I was in ASA a short time and then MI a short time, and I more or less was catapulted almost right into the MJ12 group through MI and all that. And of course, they take pretty much all of their people out of like MI. That's the best pathway for that group in particular. They'll sometimes take them from other outfits like Marines or Navy, but they will pull them into military intelligence and basically groom them, decide if they're proper or what they're looking for, and then pull them all in. And so then I was, for the next like 2.5 years or so, 2.5 to 3 years, I was at the top level of National Security Agency, which is then MK, not MK Ultra, MJ12. MJ12 is like the head of the beast, so to speak, like my head. MJ12 is here, and the rest of my body are all the other services, etc. And when I got to Germany, because I was at both of our top world bases. We had our top most secret U.S. base called Vent Hill Farms, and then from there we would deal with Pentagon and CIA training center and everything. And then I was also at our most secret base in Europe. At the time was in Herzl base, Herzogenaurach. And when I blew the whistle, then they moved the base to another area, and they put regular Army people into Herzl base to, of course, to try and claim, oh, it's just regular Army. And so that was like 69 is when I blew the whistle, and it was right around the end of 69 when I got out. They moved the base in. Well, I got out in 70, January 70, or basically severed, and I had 2 years of more or less reserve and advisory duties that I worked. I worked with Biz Johnson, a senior member of Congress, and I ended up working with him because I got him to investigate Herzl base, and that had a lot to do with Herzl base being shifted and changed. I told him what was going on, and I said, you need to get some people here to interview. And the first interview, they kind of messed up because they just put everybody together. And I told them, I said, you can't do that. I said, you need to put all of your people who are the same rank in a room, guarantee them that their names won't be used. You're not looking for testimony unless somebody's willing to testify, they can volunteer. And for all others, basically, you're just looking for information so that we know what's going on and we can take care of it. So they did another wave going through, and they did it right. And I was downtown, and the guys came in and told me that basically the commander was sent to Vietnam and refused reenlistment, and the operations officer was also sent to Vietnam and refused reenlistment, so they would be out afterwards. And their contract was shortened. And they said, we figured you did it. And At first I said, well, I didn't do anything like that. And they told me how it was done and the success of it. And I said, so these guys are out and it's done? And they said, yeah. I said, well, okay, then you guys are right. I did it. And we had a little celebration down in a little guest house in Herzogenaurach. And they said, well, everybody kind of figured you were a little bit more than what you let on. And, as far as not everybody, the whole base, but some of the higher ups and the best people who also had a really good brain, etc., head on their shoulders. And they said, because I was everywhere all the time, and pretty much no matter what was going on, I'd end up in the middle of it. And they said, so we kind of thought that, there was something more to the whole story. And they actually tried to change my file when I processed out. And the guy that was in personnel, he said, they sent me this deal here basically to destroy your file. He said, this came in 2 minutes ago. You processed through here a half hour ago. You were already gone. Here's your file. Get out of here now. And so I took my file and got out. And that's how I actually had some of my information that I needed to prove my case in U.S. District Court later. But now that was 66. And it took me until 2012 in U.S. District Court to actually win the case. I went to U.S. District Court and got remands about 5 or 6 times, and I went there myself, and I had to fight. And basically, I got the Congress to get the Equal Access to Justice Act so that veterans could have attorney power. And before that, veterans were stuck because they couldn't get an attorney. In that, an attorney couldn't make over, it was like $5 or $10 handling a case. And so we were all in a package. And so I broke that package open. But when I was in Hertzobase, we had this little room. I called it Pandora's Box later. When I made seat 13, I had carte blanche access. I started going into that room and reading things going on. And there was a lot more that happened. That report you read is kind of like the public report to say that they cleaned things up. The horrific wrongs that they did would probably, at a bare minimum, quadruple that report, including giving LSD to like 2 and 3-year-old children. Parents didn't know what was done. They gave it at like Telegraph Ave and Berkeley area. They gave LSD to 24 civilians there who had no idea that they had been given LSD. And a number of them were successful businessmen who just fell apart. So they totally changed every one of those lives. And when I was in, they did a 40 kilogram purchase in Germany. And they were giving it to Germans. They were giving it to anybody and everybody that they felt like giving it to. And some of that, like that's like money that they, let's say, could track. When they seized drugs, they would often use drugs if LSD was there. They made sales, they sold some of those drugs and would purchase LSD with it. And so I would say that the actual amount of LSD that they did and gave to civilians in other nations as well as in our nation is probably about a minimum of 1,000 times more than what's in that report. And I told them, and they were spraying it in some areas. Some of those chemtrails had LSD in it to see what would happen in that area. And I told them, I said, guys, I mean, number one, these are not volunteers. Number two, other countries who didn't volunteer and everything. And they were, they just felt so justified. They literally said, well, hey, look. And they were also using, we were starting to develop a fancy weapon at that point, which was the sound laser. And now they can do a bunch of stuff with the sound laser. It's a lot more than just the little deal that, hello, you can't remember anything anymore. They can go all the way from basically destroying a person's immune system to making your heart explode. They can do mind altering type of stuff with it by affecting you and then having like sleep subjection. And Sirhan, they had that movie. What was it called? They had a guy that they basically hypnotized and programmed. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it came out, and then they got him to shoot somebody, and they were actually experimenting with and getting some of that stuff done. And Sirhan was one of the people. When we mentioned that, I remember that they used some of that. Manchurian Candidate. That was it. Manchurian Candidate. If people get that old movie, Manchurian Candidate, that was taken off of basically some leaked information that our government was experimenting in that style of weaponry, like they called it. And they said, well, hey, we can spray this stuff all over the world. Everybody will feel good. We can do whatever we need to do. And everybody will still be very happy and feel good. And we'll have no complaints, no problems. And that's when we got into our discussion. I think I mentioned it one time about, I told them, I said, you're not God. And they said, we're God for this world. And that was one when we got into that I think was pretty much that, and what I found out about them arranging the assassination of John Kennedy and then doing what they did to Robert. And I knew Ted Kennedy was going to hit Chappaquiddick 5 days before it happened. And we used PCP on Ted. And I say we because I was still in when that was done. I was not hands-on on that one. And I told him, I said, you want me to do hands-on that one? You might as well court-martial me now because I'm going to tell you where to put your order. And it'll be toilet paper. And so they didn't use me on that because quite frankly, I love the Kennedy family. And for me now, the Trump family is kind of like the Kennedy family was back then, because both the Trump family and the Kennedy family are so much alike in their character, in their heart for America, and who they are as a human being. And they are basically one with humanity, and they are for humanity. They are definitely not for the one world setup that some of these one world people are trying to build. And I even told the one world people, I said, hey, one world would work fine if America is basically the leader, and if you are basically giving human beings their human right, educate them as to right and wrong, the right way to go, and then have punishment and reward, but not the way you're doing it. And I told him, I says, basically we got to follow biblical principles. And I told him back then, I said, number one, I says, you really can't have good leadership without men and women of prayer. And there are certain principles that are pretty much in common through many of your mainstream religions and philosophies. And a lot of people have different say, understandings of sometimes the same item. By way of example, American Indians had the eagle, the highest power, and the eagle is one of the attributes of Christ. And they also had they thanked the buffalo for giving its life so that the people could live, and the ox for the Hebrew was the sacrifice for the sins of the people. And then they had the great white father, and they had the great everywhere spirit. So they had the Christian picture. And that's why we ended up with Indian wars, because when the Europeans and everybody came over here and they used Christianity as a religion to control the American Indians and the people, you're all going to hell, so you've got to change. You've got to basically, your culture has to disappear. Everything American Indian is from hell. It's not. And good and evil's influences throughout every society. So we have to filter things properly, and we have to, when we communicate, we have to try to understand the picture that the person is portraying, and then judge the picture, or sometimes basically analyze the picture and get a little clarity on the picture being portrayed. And if we did that more, we would find out, like, probably 90% of the time, we are all far closer to one another than what people think. It's like, I think everybody's had a tale at one time or another when you see people arguing about something, and you as a witness know they're both saying the same thing in a different way, you know. But MK Ultra, they were gonna basically make everybody robots. So you will think the same way, and they actually planned on broadcasting from the air through sound that would be almost like silent sound waves, but you would pick it up. It's almost like mental telepathy. People would pick it up, be influenced by drugs, pick up these sound waves, and everybody would then suddenly kind of get the same revelation. So all of a sudden, you got 2,000 people going downtown at the same time to have lunch, or 2,000 people suddenly think it's a great idea if every baby born in the hospital gets donated to science. All of a sudden, all the babies at the hospital are being shipped to a scientific lab. No human rights or anything like that. And that's where I put my foot down, and I said, no. And I said, you guys need to change. And if you're not changing, I'm out of here. There is no way I was going any further with any of that stuff. And so that's when I started my exit plan that God basically kind of revealed to me, because at the time I was already engaged to a German national, and I was waiting on her national security clearance, and they would have turned her into another agent if she got her clearance. And so I took leave, and they knew I was mad, so they figured, okay, they'd give me a break. And so I took leave, and I went to her mom and dad's place with her. And I said, guys, we're moving the wedding up. And we moved the wedding up like about 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it was, and went to the Burgermeister and got married there. And then I went to the base and the Army chaplain, showed him my credentials, and said, do the military ceremony, etc. So he did. And then we went on our honeymoon. And when I went back, I gave them the results of MK Ultra from my standpoint. I told them, I said, I told you guys I'm out of here. And S2, G2, S4, all the guys were there. The MJ12 main guy was there, and his assistant was there. And they said, we told you we'll reactivate you when you process out. And I said, no, you won't. They said, how do you figure? I threw the papers on the desk, said, I'm married to a German national. I'm a security threat, mandated. You got 30 seconds to transfer me. And that's when we went through that deal. We'll court martial you. I said, no, you won't, because number one, you don't want a public trial. You don't want people knowing who you are. And I said, number two, you won't get a conviction because nobody told me not to marry her. So that's how then I basically broke ties. So with there you had the effects of one of the chemicals there. Now they were going to use a cocktail of chemicals. They were going to use LSD, and they had all kinds of stuff that they were trying to find the ultimate mix of chemicals for total mind control. And so they could actually, at a real low level, matter of fact, they were also using subliminal subjection, and they had tested that out already in the theaters, where a single frame in a movie would pop in with popcorn, and the person wouldn't actually pick up on it consciously, but they found when they did that, within 15 minutes, everybody in the movie had gone and purchased a bag of popcorn. And they would do soda. And within 15 minutes, everybody went and purchased soda. And people don't know it, but there were a lot of movie theaters where they released chemicals like LSD and stuff into the theater through the ventilation system. And they still use ventilation systems. They've used it on me to make sure I didn't wake up when they came in and took some of my blood, or if they shot me full of stuff. And I talked to some of the guys who actually got out, some of them, and some of them were still in, but they said, hey, nobody wants to touch you because they have shot me full of drugs that did nothing. And they've tried to use snipers, and the snipers said when they aimed at me, their weapon wouldn't fire. And I met one of them, and he reminded me of a incident in Weaverville when I went into up to this, like, I think it was a 2 or 3 story wood building, and I had set up a meeting with a guy there, and he said they told the guy, don't be there, and you don't want to be there because there's going to be a body on your porch. And so he wasn't there, and I knocked on his door a few times, and all of a sudden the porch light next to me blew out. And with a 9mm sniper rifle, they can silence it completely. And he basically told me, he said he shot that light out with the 9mm sniper rifle. And when the light blew out, I thought, that was weird. I thought, man, I didn't feel any cold draft. I thought maybe the light somehow got hot glass, cold air hits it, it'll go boom, or it'll break. And when I met that guy, and God he let me see that and let me remember that, because as soon as that guy mentioned that, I said, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because when I found out that the Democratic Party had made a contract with MK Ultra, or with the MJ-12, and that they were going to further the MJ-12 program, and I left the Democrat Party. That was 1980, and I ran an independent, basically, write-in campaign. And I did it, and my platform was, we need to return to God and country, and human rights, etc. And I got a call from both Republican and Democratic headquarters. We understand you've got the platform people want to hear. And I told the Democrats, I said, that's the problem. They said, what do you mean? I said, you didn't tell me I have the solutions that America needs. You told me I have what the people want to hear. And I've already talked to the leaders like Pelosi and Schiff and, what the other one, anyway, the other gal there and stuff. But I had already talked to them, and I said, they told me, you guys tell the people what they want to hear, get in office, and then it's business as usual. And you're all about not serving the people, but finding a way to control their minds and decide their future for them. Whereas America is supposed to be about Americans able to decide their own future and able to develop their future, so long as it does not infringe on the rights of other Americans. And yet, government is going to have the right to infringe on everybody's right? No, no way. And so I ran a write-in campaign, and I spent, I think I spent a total of $500 for for both election periods, and I got more votes, write-in votes, per 50 cents spent than what the incumbent and challenger got per $5 spent. So I did it basically to make a statement, and I've been standing for that statement ever since basically 1969 when I got out. I've been fighting this fight to get them exposed and stopped. And they've used smear and fear on me. They've used false charges against me. They have tried to make people afraid of me. And they've used everything in the book. And they've even laced my VA prescriptions with drugs, because there was more than once my prescriptions should not have done what they did. And I thought it was, let's say, Monday or Tuesday, and it was Thursday or Friday. So I had at times 2 and 3 and 4 days that were just gone. I couldn't remember one single second of those 3 or 4 days. So that's one of the reasons I called VA, and I told them I'd rather have pain in the brain than no pain and no brain. And I told them, I said, I don't want anything stronger than ibuprofen or Motrin. And I whittled down all of my so-called meds, and I went through a lot of pain. But I also did an experiment with marijuana, and it does have some medical uses, but it also has some dangers, because if a person, especially if people get the heavy duty stuff or they do a lot of it, it will affect a person's memory. And I did a study on that, and I couldn't remember other stuff, and I was trying to actually see if I could boost my memory. And then I did a bunch of memory games where you've got to remember everything in order to make it through the game. And I went on a vegetarian diet and also some brain food diet and stuff, and rebuilt my memory, repaired the damaged areas, documented the fact that it'll do that. Plus, with marijuana, there are a lot of outfits. They used to have what they called elephant weed and super weed, stuff like that. And a lot of these guys would take the marijuana shake or low grade marijuana that is basically hemp. It's they make rope with it and string, etc. And they would soak it in PCP and then give it a fancy name for strong stuff. And if a person smokes that and they see a light bulb go off, you could close your eyes and see these little light bulbs go off. Every one of those light bulbs going off is a brain cell dying. And I did a complete study on that. And then I gave my papers and my study report to the Shasta County Probation Department. They read it. They absolutely loved it. And they said, can we keep this and put it in our library? And I said, yes, you can. That's why I did it. I said, you can share that nationwide. And so they put it in their library, and I think they shared it with a lot of other outfits. So some of the marijuana stuff now, yeah, you don't get an angry drunk, but you can get a person doing things and not remembering it. A person who is on medical marijuana should never touch mechanical, because they might think they did your brakes and they didn't, and you go out and your brakes fail, and they'll swear up and down they put new brakes in there. And airplane mechanics and stuff like that. There are safety areas whereby they are going to have testing for marijuana and drugs in safety areas. Those things dare not be allowed. They cannot be used. It's absolute. So that is the edges of that whole area.
Right. That was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So where do I even go with that?
Yeah. It's kind of like government is admitting a misdemeanor when they're guilty of a felony that is
Well,
death penalty style.
yeah, capital crime for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, MK Ultra got used on you as well.
Yep.
Did you ever effectuate MK Ultra on anyone during
Oh
your
no.
career?
No,
No.
I absolutely refused to use it. Yeah, I told him, I said, you can court martial me, you can
Mhm.
put a 9mm in my head, and the answer is going to be the same thing. No. Yeah, I would do a lot of things, and I found out that, let's put it this way, I found out that I eliminated some innocent people. And when I found out that I eliminated some innocent people, that started some of our talks too. And I said, we don't need to like eliminate threats to national security. Take them out, take them to Gitmo or whatever, and nobody knows where they are, and then find out if whatever we're doing, if there's anything different all of a sudden. Because if they're an influence and they get removed, there's going to be some differences. We're going to get feedback on differences taking place,
Okay.
you know? And I said, then if there's no difference, because the Communist Party was putting shop owners and stuff, business owners, on their list of high value cooperatives, if that person would not give the Communist Party a monthly payment. So we were actually being the Guido for the Communist Party,
Imagine
you
that.
know? And I told him, I said, guys, this is ludicrous.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I had no problem killing an enemy, eliminating an enemy. But for me, my service, I wanted to follow basically legal, moral, and ethical guidelines, and guidelines that made more sense. Because I said, now we take these guys out to Gitmo, and then we let them know why they're at Gitmo, and there's no difference made. Now we could get them to be an agent for us and tell them, look, we'll provide you the money. You give it to these people. You let us know when you're going to get together. And then we could start identifying more of their agents. And then once we knew all of their group, we could take the real group out all at the same time. And that would have a huge impact. Those guys, they got no common sense. They are so full of their own self that I told him, I said, as far as I'm concerned, you guys have an IQ of about 1. No, and that was it. So
That's
yeah,
saying something.
yeah,
IQ of 1.
yep. And I told him I'm being generous, giving them an IQ of 1, because they
Right.
can't see anything that's really intelligent. They can only see their own self desire and whatever they come up with in their mind. And I'm not too sure if some of them hadn't taken LSD and their mind was twisted.
Right.
Yep.
Hang on one
Yeah.
second.
Matter of fact, there was a movie, Dr. Strangelove. When I saw, did you ever see Dr. Strangelove?
Yes.
Okay, and then toward the end, they got all the atom bombs going off, and Dr.
Yeah.
Strangelove, his hand is grabbing him to strangle him and everything. When I saw that, I said, That's MJ12 right there, man.
Right.
Everyone, every one of them. MJ1. Yeah. What? What do you want? What do you want? You know.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And they would do what was done there.
Right.
That's why they built we've got an underground America. And it was part of the MK Ultra program.
We have multiple sub levels.
Yeah.
Working independently, cohesively. Yeah, it's insane what's going on, what we've allowed to happen.
The Taos hum was the TBM, tunnel boring machine, building underground installations in Taos. And when they finished, the hum was gone. You haven't heard anything more about it.
Yeah, that's going on everywhere where people hear the hums and they can't figure out where it's coming from.
And as there's two areas it comes from. One is the underground tunnel boring machine, making underground America. And they told me I had a ticket for it. And I said, well, what about my family? They said, no, it's only the select that are going underground, and you're select. And I said, I'll stay on top of my family. The other thing that makes that hum is the sound weapon. Low frequency sound waves turned into a weapon, and they can turn it up enough where they could aim that at a tree and the tree would literally disintegrate. It would just turn into toothpicks.
Okay. We'll do another show on weapon technology.
Yep. And those are both, those actually are both in the same program. Those were both part of the MK Ultra.
Oh yeah, I would imagine there's all kinds
total control and total destruction.
Right. Like in the video you were talking, we did earlier today, you were discussing your basically an acoustic rifle, you called it, microphone.
Yep. That's the sound wave weapon that they weaponize the low frequency sound wave, and then they can add microwave and all kinds of other stuff to it, so they can lower your immune system. They can turn it up enough, and I think that's what they hit my dad with, because the coroner said he had never seen anything like it. All of my dad's heart muscles basically exploded at the same time.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, so they set the depth of that sound wave deal to it's almost like say a welding deal where you could actually go into the center of the steel, you know, and create a weld in the center of the steel rather than having to go from the outside in. They could actually set the depth, and they set the depth on him and hit his heart with it, and it exploded, and they found him dead in bed the next day. And that was about a year. I think that was about a year after I got out. They said, we'll make life hell for you. My dad went the year after I got out. My mom went the second year after I was out. My aunt went the year after that. My uncle went the year after that.
So you buffered. Let me ask you this. The dispersal of the various types of drugs used. I know in a interrogative setting, it would be much more controlled, but let's say you're trying to hit a target in just say a theater, but there's 200 people in the theater and you really want to target one, and you can't get close enough to that person to actually put something on their body, spray them or whatever, but you have to do it, kind of anonymously out of the way. You suggested the ventilation system. So give us this little small story, quick, not a 45-minute story.
Yeah.
Of a scenario that you participated in, the type of drugs that you delivered, the target, what the purpose was, and how you delivered it, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, actually, for me, the only time I would use drugs is like on a one-on-one interrogation. And I refused to do the one where they would have an effect on an entire theater or whatever. However, I know what they did, and you you got your your room where your cameras are, right? And you
Mhm.
got your projection deal shooting out this way, okay?
Mhm.
In those camera rooms, they would always go to an like you could walk across the theater, across the top of the audience, and most of them had almost like say your sound absorption type ceilings. So the
Mhm.
ceiling is almost like a paper type of a ceiling.
Kind of
They
like paper mache, sprayed on paper
right,
mache. Yeah.
right, and they would say one they've had a couple deals they would use your subliminal subjection to get the person to go get a soda, and then
Right.
when they got the soda, one of their agents would be, let's say, one of the servers, and they'd put it in the soda and then give it to that person. Then another way, if they didn't have that, is they would actually drill a hole down through the roof and then just drop almost like a little trickle of sand where it would fall down on that person, and some of it would get into the drink or into the popcorn.
Wow, you could actually do that with a liquid. Just drip it right on their head.
You could do it with a liquid, drip it on their head. You could do it with something to go into the popcorn or into their drink, and it would dissolve into the drink. Yeah, that was those were your two single target methods.
Wow. Okay. And obviously, you just did the interrogative setting. So, what did that look like on the interrogative setting when you're in a
Yeah, an
control?
interrogation setting basically use things. I would use like things like tranquilizers, to get them to kind of relax, etc. Um, and in those settings, sometimes we would use different derivatives or etc. from marijuana to, we had a couple of hybrid marijuana type setups that would actually kind of make a person talkative,
Yeah, there's.
you
Yep.
know, yeah, and then we would also use that we could use PCP, because with PCP you can get a person to hallucinate. We
Oh,
could we could actually take PCP, give it to a person, and walk into a room with them with scuba gear on, and then maybe raise a like a almost like well in a theater or something where you say raise a gate, and now
right.
all of a sudden you could see, right? And on the other side would be say water or whatever, and maybe a couple of little artificial scuba divers, and the person would hallucinate and think that they were scuba diving with you. And in their mind, they're swimming through the tank.
Right.
So,
Wow.
and we did experiment with some of that stuff for interrogation and everything. And the thing I told them, though, was that basically you could get some stuff out of it, but you'd still have to double check it because it was not reliable enough. And then the other thing that we basically experimented with was some strains of pot where a person would feel friendly towards you. And then we would try the friendly approach. You know that your people don't really care about you, or they would have tried to come rescue you already. We really do care about you. We care about our people. Look how nice we treat our people. And we would show them stuff, treating our guys really nice and stuff like that. And we would use that to try to say win them over to volunteer information, and then sometimes use a combination of what you gather from all of that to put pressure on somebody. We already know this, to get them to confess. Well, gee, how'd you know that? You know. And then the other one used was waterboarding.
Back then in the 60s?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Waterboarding goes all the way back to the 50s. Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll have to get into that on a whole different show. Um, what else can you tell us about MK Ultra? Um, I know you came into it probably, actually, roughly in the middle of it, right?
Well,
65?
actually, I got into it. I found out about MK Ultra in '69.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's when I found out they had already been doing MK Ultra because they more or less MK Ultra in many ways ushered in the psychedelic era. You know,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah. So
100, 100%.
yeah, it was a side effect. It started out as a side effect, and then they decided to expand it. And yeah. So many of our national drug problems are basically the fault of it lays at the feet of MJ12, MK Ultra stuff, and our weather problems lay at the feet of MJ12 because they were weaponizing weather when I was in. And two huge programs that I absolutely refused to go with were MK Ultra and weaponizing weather because I knew weaponizing weather would change all of your weather currents, you know? And wild thing is,
Right.
I saw that and I read the Bible where it talked about deserts will blossom. And I said, you know what? God forecast their experimentation with weather 2,000 years ago. He knew where these guys were going because it's the experimentation with weather that's changing the weather currents, and deserts are going to be getting rain where they didn't get rain before, and forests where they got plenty of rain are drying up, burning up, and turning into deserts.
Let me ask you this. So, obviously, during the interrogation, they would have, I guess, a NSA doctor there, CIA doctor, FBI doctor to administer the drugs, or would they allow you to have all access?
I could administer the drugs if I wanted to, and their agents would administer the drugs. Yeah. So, their whole thing was to basically get the information. They would use a doctor sometimes if they wanted to make sure that maybe an inexperienced person didn't go too far, you know. But
Right.
like, I mean, they could give me a shot and say, okay, give them 1 cc, not more than 1 cc. The person weighs 180 pounds or they weigh 240 pounds, 180 to 240 pounds, 1 cc, not over that amount. And if you want, you could start out or you could put a little in their drink at first and things like that.
Who do you know, in your own opinion and own experience, that have been victims of the MK Ultra programming?
Oh, Sirhan. I think that,
RFK's assassin,
yep. And they use some of that stuff on Oswald,
Lee Harvey Oswald,
Lee Harvey.
JFK's
And yeah,
assassin,
they use
alleged.
yeah, they use some of that stuff on a couple of the guys that basically became serial killers. Charlie Manson, it was basically a criminal and a victim because he got into that stuff and they just let him go all the way and just to see what he would do. And matter of fact, what was the name of the gal that he killed again?
Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was actually getting together with some of the Hollywood people and had picked up information on some of this stuff. And she wanted to go like straight, and she wanted to get together with people to try to influence government. And she was pro Kennedy, and she was pro what Kennedy wanted. And I
This
believe
is
100%.
RFK, right? RFK, not JFK.
She liked JFK and RFK both,
Right.
The Kennedy platform came from Robert and John, but John was the primary builder of
Right.
that platform, which is
Yeah.
the Republican platform of today. You know?
Yeah. Strangely
Yeah,
enough, right?
yeah. The Republicans saw that Kennedy had some good stuff, and they said, "Hey, he's right. This is the way we should go." And then
Right.
the Democrats said, "Oh no, no, no! We've got to no. We can't all agree. We've got no. We're going to have to be more radical because no, we can't have all be on the same platform."
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're a huge Kennedy fan.
Yep. Because John, he was brilliant. Number one,
Uh-huh.
he had a great heart, great spirit. I mean, and even though he probably thought I was Secret Service, God set it up where they all thought I was Secret Service, blew him away when I told him, I said, check your Whiskey Town Dam footage. See this right here? That's me. Hey guys, I was 17-year-old football player. What? I'm carrying a hotline message from here to here.
Right.
So, yeah. So the first badge they developed right away was what we called the rainbow badge. And we had this rainbow badge we would wear if it was one of our functions or we were going to operations. It had your picture and it had a special, like a rainbow imprint
Uh-huh.
that would be nearly impossible to counterfeit
Wow.
because it was multi-level. So when our scanner hit it, our
Hmm.
scanner would pick up the different levels of it and read down through it. And that was our first badge.
Rainbow badge.
Yeah, I called it
That's,
the rainbow badge.
oh, you called it the rainbow badge.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the name I gave it. But everybody else kind of picked up on it. They were all picking up on it. Yeah, and sometimes I wonder if that's where the rainbow family came from. Some of the guys got out or something. Yeah, we used to have this rainbow badge. Hey, let's fight all that garbage, and we'll have the rainbow family.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So
All right. Anything else you want to add to the MK Ultra program?
it's the most dangerous program that has ever been devised. And I mean, people have really got to watch out because in the MK Ultra program, that's where they're coming up with so much stuff today, pushing toward one world control, and that's where the philosophy came from. End justifies the means, and they believe that they have the right to not only lie to, but go as far as eliminate. They didn't call it murder; they called it elimination. Anybody and everybody who stands in their way. And mass elimination is not eliminated from their book. That's why there's been deals where, like Maryvale, all of a sudden they had 26 deaths or whatever from like a leukemia type of a deal. And they claimed that it was in the water.
Right.
And they dubbed it as one of the 17 disaster areas. And in another area, all of a sudden you got 20, 30, 40 children dying from child leukemia. In another area, all of a sudden you got 30, 40, 50 people dying from brain cancer and stuff. That's coming out of MK Ultra, mind control, and weaponry. And if a town is building a lot of resistance, they'll eliminate a whole bunch of the town. Those deals are mass murder laying at the feet of MJ12 and their MK Ultra plan, which includes one world control. So they're not out of MK Ultra yet. They'll change a few things, but they are still headed for total control of the world.
Wow. That's nuts. That's crazy. What a story.
Yep.
And we've just barely even, glazed over it because you weren't that involved with it, considering that it's known to have been in operation for only 20 years, but I would say, I don't even know if I want to go there. Definitely some celebrities have been allegedly MK Ultra'd. We're not going to dive into who all they are because there's just so
It
many.
started in 47.
Yeah, and it's progressed to modern day. Absolutely.
They had the design of it in 47, and the original 12, their target was to get powerful enough to implement MK Ultra. And they changed the name from time to time, just like MJ12, you know.
All right. Yeah, we will. Well, I went through that on the pre-show about how many different subtopics, subcategories that they have underneath it.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's still running under something completely innocuous that has nothing to do with MK or MK Ultra or any subcategory. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the main headquarters might be like we had Bent Hill Farms in the U.S. It might be some ranch somewhere, you know, and stuff like that. So, yeah, they'll normally give it a name that people will pass right over.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Definitely. All right, man. Well, it is obviously December 31st, going into 2025. Next show will definitely be a new year, new show. Anything you would like to tell the audience for New Year's Eve?
Yeah. As we go through this and as we are moving toward basically truth and disclosure and accountability, etc., people need to also remember, number one, we need to get leaders that we really can trust, leaders who have legal, moral, and ethical values that are demonstrated in their life, not just spoken. Because the Bible tells us, beware of those who, for a pretext, will say long prayers to sit in high places. And we have to then get leaders who we can trust, and we have to allow them to not tell us everything they're doing, because that tells the enemy too. And sometimes they can't tell us everything that they did, but they can tell us enough about what they did and why, so that the people will know they had good justification and they did their best to do it the right way with minimal damage. I mean, you can't have a war without the fact that some innocent people are going to get hurt. We can minimize it as much as we can. And the trouble is, sometimes we have to go there, because if not, whereas the war, let's say we have 100 innocent victims, if we don't go there, we've got millions of innocent victims. So sometimes it's about basically minimizing the damage, but there will be damage. And so that's why we need men and women of prayer, men and women who have real values that are in the right realm. And then we have to kind of let them do their job and trust that basically as little damage as possible is done. But we also have to stay involved enough so that sometimes we kind of check on the damage and make sure the numbers are right.
Yep.
But we can't do it beforehand. That's why I loved it when Trump shut them down. Are you going to have preemptive strikes on Iran? And I sent him a kudos on that one. Yeah,
right.
You're learning to control that tongue, baby. the
Yeah,
New Yorker deal is going out the window, and the president is coming in.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot more wiser than what he used to be.
Well, believe me, I've been hammering on him big time.
Enough. All right, my brother. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the MK Ultra story. And I don't know what we're going to do next, but I'll get it in the can and get you updated. So with that, thanks for being on the show, and we'll have you back.
My pleasure, and I'm glad to be doing it, and that's why we're doing it, because I'm pushing 80, so I figure a lot of the stuff I know needs to get out there before it's gone.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Noel. Happy
God bless.
holidays. And there you have it, folks. Noel Benoist. Always great to have Noel on the show. Again, we are co-authoring a book together, The Pedagogy of Noel, basically the life of Noel Benoist. So again, if you didn't catch some of the topics that we're going to cover in future videos, these will be all in, I would say the majority of them are going to be in January 2025. We're going to cover J. Edgar Hoover, specific weapons technology that he utilized during his military intelligence career, the Warren Commission report, the creation of the NSA, the National Security Administration. We're going to talk about Roswell, New Mexico, and the Roswell event, the Church Commission, deep underground military bases, Bob Lazar, cloning, and whatever other topic you want to come up with that he may or may not have some information on. As you see from the banner running down here below, talks about what MJ12 is and all the claims. Now I'm going to hit what's coming up for the rest of the month of December. For those of you who didn't catch the beginning of the video, just jumped on. We are in the middle of the 12 days of Christmas, so be sure and look for this. That banner will be on thefearlessfloydshow.com, and that will be my special of the day for 12 days of Christmas. I have an abundance of physical books, so I'm going to be running some really good deals on the books, blowing those out with some classes and packages. So look for those. If you have not yet, please go and nominate my friend. And if you have somebody that has issues with their immune system, they're going through a something, you might want to check out these products at fearlessfloydpets.com. If you have any questions about this product, its effectiveness, fearlessfloydpets@gmail.com. Just send an email. Your questions will be answered. Might even get a reply by phone if you include your phone number and your topic or question is probably less time consuming to have a conversation than via email. So I think I've covered everything I need to cover. So don't forget, be sure and